Good evening from Earthquake Stadium, and welcome to another edition here of Black and Azul Post-Game Live. I'm joined by the rest of the team, Joel Soria, Alex Morgan, Jamon Moore. My name is Charles Wollin, and thanks everybody for tuning into our program tonight. The Quakes with a 0-0 draw against the defending MLS Cup champions and top of the West currently right now, the Seattle Sounders. It was a pretty intense game. We could hear a lot of commotion, of course, on the sidelines. Chances here, chances there, but a point earned for the San Jose Earthquakes tonight. And they don't lose to the team that beat them 7-1 just about a month or so ago. Joel, how did you think the Quakes fared tonight? We talked a little bit in the pregame, but does a point make sense for this team, and how much does it mean?
Good evening, Charles. Good evening to all our viewers. I think that the Quakes would take this draw 10 out of 10 times, especially considering the fact that not too long ago, they let in 7 goals against the same Seattle Sounders. Yes, sure, they didn't have Rui Diaz today. Obviously a crucial blow for the Sounders, but all in all, I mean, you limit the Sounders to 4 total shots and 1 on target. You have to tip your cap towards them. Tonight, the Quakes just showed so much energy, so much tenacity, and so much conviction that you have to say it to yourself. I mean, they definitely earned the point.
Alex Morgan, what did you make of the performance this evening from the home side?
Yeah, Charles, it was only a draw, but it felt like a big result for the Quakes because it was such a competent performance. And they were certainly the underdogs, but they really nullified Seattle. They didn't let Jordan Morris or Christian Roldan get in behind. And then I think for me, the key was how they shut down Nicolas Lodeiro, because Judson was man marking him and absolutely shut him down. They didn't let him dictate the game. And for me, that's how they were able to eke out the draw. It definitely wasn't the most exciting affair, but I think it'll be a really satisfying one for Matías Almeyda.
And Jamon Moore, what did you think of all of that?
Yeah, we talked in the pregame about limiting the number of shots on target that the Sounders were able to take, and the Quakes did that. Unfortunately, they didn't generate enough of their own. I know there was a lot of chatter online about the lack of substitutions, but right now the Quakes are a little bit thin on the bench, and we saw at the Portland game, even when the score was 3-0, Matías didn't really go to his bench because he basically said, "Who am I going to bring on?" Right? This is not a game for the kids, and well, we probably will ask him in the press conference, what the thought process was tonight. I think would give the same answer. He's just like, hey, we had a point in hand, and I didn't really look at the bench and see that there was someone who's going to come on that was going to allow me to ensure that I walked away with that point. What I saw on the field was good enough, and sure enough, it was good enough, to I think get some confidence continuing to go for this team. A 0-0 draw against the Sounders at home right now is still a good result. It would be folly to be more greedy than that right now. Last year, Quakes fans will remember, Quakes would get a little greedy with points, and it cost them, and they missed the playoffs as a result. Almeyda seems a bit more pragmatic this year in terms of making sure that they get these home points.
Yeah, I want to come back to the substitutions in a little bit once folks get the chance to ask Matías Almeyda that question in the press conference and hear from Matías Almeyda as well. We'll bring that to you live here, so you want to stick around on Black and Azul. Jamon, you just talked about the confidence. And Joel, last show, and a couple shows ago, you've been stressing this team needs to get results against the top teams in the West and be able to gain that confidence. Right at the end of this game, we just saw Judson drop to his knees and pray. And he looked up to the heavens, and he wasn't just there for 2-3 seconds. He was there for a good bit of time. And I do see some comments here. How many miles did Judson run tonight from Thomas Boggs? Judson's so key to this team. I don't want to talk tactically about Judson, but I do want to ask about the confidence level, how much it can do for a dressing room at this point. A dressing room that lost 7-1 to this team earlier in the season. And now they're in a good stretch. They're in a good run of form, as you know. What does it really mean to the dressing room and the players at heart to know, you know what? They might come in here, they might think that they can beat us tonight, but you know what? We'll take a draw.
Yeah, I would say that this is a psychological boost like very, very few. Again, you have to reiterate it because, in my opinion, it was one of the darkest nights in San Jose Earthquakes history. That 7-1 defeat at CenturyLink Field. You know, so much happened that night, and so much came after it. And to come out today, show poise, show character, show grit and tenacity the way that they did, you know, hold the Sounders, one of the most potent attacking teams in the league, as we all know, one of the best teams, if not the best team in the league, to 4 total shots. You have to pat yourself on the back. You have to say the Quakes did it right today. I felt like they could have won the game in a couple of instances. Then again, they had a couple of good defensive last-minute efforts that held the scoreline to what it came out to be today. You know, a 0-0 draw. I think back to that Carlos Fierro run in the 70-something minute, happens to get a header to the ball, and that could have easily been a goal for the Sounders if Rodan would have gone his right foot to it. So you just have to applaud this team tonight. They left it all on the field, and Jutsen's, you know, prayer was very telling of that.
And Joel, I think that's something that he does every game, actually, before and after every game. But tonight, sure. The Quakes' prayers were obviously answered, I think. And one of the things that we learned from the last Seattle game, the 7-1 defeat, was that if San Jose play one-dimensionally, if they only have one way of pressing, they will get exposed, especially by good counterattacking teams like Seattle. And so what Almeyda started to do after that game was change up the pressing system, implement more variety. So specifically in that game against LAFC 2-1, the first result that the Quakes got in this phase of games was to start the line of engagement a little lower and play a little more defensively. And that's something that I was impressed by tonight as well. That was one of the reasons they were able to get a result, was because of the flexibility of their pressing system. At times they pushed really high, and in other situations, maybe when they were at a numerical disadvantage or when they had some other tactical vulnerability, their line of engagement was much deeper, much closer to the halfway line. And they were also shifting marks. They were passing off marks a little bit more. And that flexibility was super key against a team like Seattle, whose movement and whose pace is really, really dangerous up front. So that's something they did really well tonight.
Sort of to piggyback off what Almeyda has been preaching the last couple of weeks, I would say that one of the main reasons why they were able to be so adaptable today is given the fact that they've had more training time. It's no secret the system is very demanding physically, and in order to add some wrinkles here and there, you're going to have to be fit. You have to be at 100%, if not more. Obviously, we know that Matías is famous for saying that he demands not 100 but 200%, or that this team needed 200% in order to get out of the hole that they were in. Well, today they showed 200%. Would you guys agree, Jamon?
Yeah, no, absolutely, Joel. And I can see from the fans who are watching on television that it felt like a slow game. But here in the stadium, it felt like a very intense game. You could actually just see it and feel it in the air. Defensively, it was a real matchup. A lot of second balls tonight. JT, they faced pressure in a different kind of way than they had seen it so far since he started playing. The Sounders were sitting back and looking to put pressure on the second and third pass out, not the first pass like LA Galaxy was chasing, and the Quakes were able to find those holes. Seattle sat back. They would wait for the ball to go to the wings, and they would often double on the wings on whether it was Tommy Thompson, whether it was Nick Lima, or whether it was somebody else. There was a lot of different kind of pressure being applied tonight, and the Quakes had to figure that out. And kudos to them, because that was the type of pressure that got them in the 7-1 loss. Tonight, they were able to handle that kind of pressure. It wasn't pretty soccer very often at all, but they dominated possession for the first part of the game. They were able to, in most situations, figure out how to play out of the back. Sometimes that meant clearing it out and getting it long instead and winning second balls. But they found ways to be able to do that. Conversely, the Sounders, I think, created an intentionally messy game. And it felt like the way that they wanted to play tonight. So it kind of came across that way. But make no mistake, defensively, it was actually a pretty intense battle tonight. And, both teams, I think, were kind of playing for the stalemate at the end.
I'm glad that you brought up that the Quakes were willing to play this sort of huff ball style, clearing the ball from the back of the line and hoping that they would win a duel or an aerial ball here and there. That is so unlike Almeyda. And that's not the only unlike Almeyda trait that we've seen from this team as of late. I mean, we think back to the LAFC game when the team turned that corner, and what we relate to that game is, bunkering and setting up 2 blocks of 4 in the back. So what this tells me is that the Quakes are finally starting to kind of step out of their circle and are willing to take on different traits that weren't native to this team. This team is progressing. This team is more on the creative side now, I would dare to say.
Yeah, Joel, and I think that really it's a shift from dogmatism to pragmatism. It's that Matías Almeyda is making these tactical adaptations. And one of the reasons he's able to do that is because he's found his favorite starting lineup. When the Quakes played Seattle last time back in September, they were playing guys like Paul Marie and Tanner Beeson and Luis Felipe, guys that don't have much experience in MLS, because he was trying to experiment with these different variations in the lineup and test out some of these depth players who he hadn't seen before in the regular season. But once he found his favorite starting 11, the iteration of this team that works best, he stuck with it. And we talked to Nick Lima midweek, and he said that consistency is one of the reasons that the Quakes have been able to build week on week over week, and get even better, because they have the foundations. They've got the basics down now, so they can afford to be a little more flexible and introduce more of these wrinkles into their game plans.
Stand by.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and jump in here. Oh, sorry. Are they starting?
No, go ahead, Jamon.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so this was a bit of a different squad than what faced the Sounders, up in Seattle the last time. But, one of the big changes that has been Nick Lima has been playing every single game, on that right, and he was able to, for the most part, be able to contain a lot of what Jordan Morris tried to do. Obviously, Morris was able to get in behind, not due to Lima, but more due to Youngworth, and he had an opportunity that went wide. But let's not overlook how much this team has changed with JT in the back, Lima getting consistent starts. Lopez, since he's been gone, Tommy's done a pretty good job filling in for him on the left side, which is not a side that Tommy's played, almost at all ever. It's actually kind of overall worked. It's been, I think, pretty rock solid defensively, even if offensively sometimes they're not yet seeing a lot of production against the teams like Portland and Seattle, who have more solidity in the defensive structures.
Jamon, and that matchup between Tommy Thompson and Christian Roldan was one that we were particularly worried about in the pregame, because Tommy Thompson is not a natural defender and Christian Roldan is so dangerous. But I thought that Tommy Thompson played really well. He shut him down, and I can't remember Christian Roldan having very many dangerous chances in this match.
If you're just joining us, make sure that you like and subscribe Black and Azul. This is a live post-game episode of Black and Azul. If you like what you're seeing, hit that like button. Make sure that you subscribe. Ring the bell. I'm not really sure what that means. Maybe that's something new. Maybe I am obsolete, but that's okay. Matías Almeyda will be joining us very soon for his post-match press conference in just a minute. We are a community here. We strive to give you the best Earthquakes coverage as well. So make sure that you tell a friend or tell someone to subscribe to our show as well. Osvaldo Alanis, he's back in the lineup tonight alongside Florian Youngworth. He did pretty well back there. He made a pretty good tackle right there in the second half. And Florian Youngworth did get beat on that Jordan Morris chance right at the end. But center back pairing, Alex, how did we think that they did?
I mean, it was a clean sheet for the Quakes, so I thought they played quite well tonight. And it's amazing to have three healthy center backs finally, between the injuries to Alanis, to Florian Youngworth, to Kasia. The Quakes were really depleted in that position a few weeks ago, but now they have three fit center backs, and I think all three of them are of starting caliber. Tanner Beeson was on the bench tonight. Alanis was in, and I thought he played well, but they're all starting caliber, in my opinion.
Okay, here's Matías Almeyda in his post-match press conference. Stand by.
Following the Quakes scoreless draw with Seattle Sounders FC, we are joined by head coach Matías Almeyda. We'll start by taking a few questions in English and then a couple more in Spanish. So let's get started with Alex Morgan.
Hi, Matías. Good to see you. Thank you for joining us again tonight. How satisfied are you with this performance? What are the positives and the negatives as you see it?
¿Qué tan satisfecho está con este partido? ¿Cuáles son los negativos y positivos de este partido?
Bueno, creo que buenas noches primero.
First, good evening.
Hay muchas cosas positivas.
I think there's a lot of positive things.
Para mi modo de ver el fútbol, jugamos con el mejor equipo de la liga.
For my way of seeing football, we played against the best team in the league.
Con el equipo que nos metió 7 goles no hace mucho tiempo.
Against a team that scored 7 goals on us not long ago.
Un equipo que respeto mucho a su entrenador.
A team that I respect their coach greatly.
Y creo que tienen al mejor jugador de la liga, que es Lodeiro.
And I think they have the best player in the league, who is Lodeiro.
Realmente hicimos un partido muy inteligente.
We really had an intelligent game.
Con una entrega por parte de los jugadores magnífica.
And the players had a magnificent delivery.
Donde no se notaba que habíamos jugado hacía 4 días.
Where you couldn't tell that we played 4 days ago.
Creo que con esta concentración, con esta actitud, con esta movilidad,
I think that with this concentration, this attitude, and this mobility,
el equipo es el equipo que queremos ver y nos gusta ver.
the team is a team that we like to see and that we want to see.
Thank you, Matías. Let's go to Jamon Moore.
Good evening, Matías. Congratulations on the clean sheet and the point. Just a question for you about what you were thinking about toward the end of the game. You only used the one substitution again tonight, similar to Portland. And what was the thought process tonight in determining whether or not you wanted to use the substitutes? Thank you.
Quería preguntar cuál pensamiento tenía al tramo final del partido. Usaste solamente un cambio parecido al partido de Portland. ¿Qué pensabas sobre los cambios?
En realidad, como iba viendo el partido, que estábamos bien.
The truth is, I was watching the game and we were doing well.
Creo que el cambio final fue para producir esa acción de gol que tuvo Salinas.
I think to make the sub, it was to provoke that goal-scoring chance that Salinas had.
Pero muchas veces es difícil cambiar para mantener una estructura y una estrategia.
But many times it's hard to make changes to hold the strategy and the structure.
Entonces, muchas veces intentamos cambiar para ganar el partido.
So many times we make changes to try to win the game.
Pero es muy difícil mantener lo que teníamos pensado.
But it's very difficult to maintain what we've had thought out.
Y veía la respuesta de los jugadores que estaban bien.
And I saw the responses from the players and they were doing well.
Thank you, Matías. We will go to Alicia Rodriguez next.
Thank you. Matías, you guys remain above the playoff line in the Western Conference. You have 4 games to play. Is your approach to keep an eye on the standings and the other results around the conference, or more to just worry about what your team needs to do, each and every game?
El equipo sigue en posición de playoff. Si vos sos más de mirar los otros equipos y mirar otros resultados, o depender de tu equipo y ver qué vos puedas hacer.
Realmente y honestamente,
Truly and honestly,
No pienso en los playoffs.
I'm not thinking about playoffs.
Solo deseo que el equipo termine jugando con una identidad propia este torneo.
I only wish that this team finishes playing this tournament with a self-identity.
Un torneo que por momentos para nosotros resultó totalmente negativo.
A season that for moments for us were completely negative.
Entonces voy viviendo partido tras partido, pero siempre mirándonos a nosotros.
So I'm always living it game by game, but I'm always looking at ourselves.
All right, thank you, Matías. We will go now into the Spanish portion with Joel Soria.
Buenas noches, Matías. Joel Soria.
Buenas noches.
Quiero hablar un poco de lo psicológico. Obviamente sé que una derrota como la que sufrió el equipo hace un poco más de un mes, le dejó una sensación fea, yo creo, al equipo, pero el jugarle a tú por tú hoy, como lo jugaron contra los Sounders, no dejándolos, limitándolos a 4 tiros al arco, ¿qué tipo de impacto tiene en sus jugadores psicológicamente? Gracias.
Bueno, creo que los jugadores han retomado la confianza. Hemos trabajado para que ellos se dieran cuenta que pueden competir. No era fácil levantarse de tantas derrotas y por tantos goles. Y nosotros insistimos por nuestro camino del trabajo, de la aceptación, de saber que cuando el equipo está mal lo sufre y cuando el equipo está unido y juega como equipo, compite. Bueno, creo que desde hace un par de partidos se ve un equipo que trabaja en equipo, que todos corren y todos juegan, y que hoy juegan con una confianza que no la teníamos hace un mes atrás. Y bueno, esto, ojalá que ellos sigan tranquilos y queriendo seguir por algo más.
Thank you, Matías. Just one last question from Carlos Justis.
Matías, buenas noches, Carlos Justis de Telemundo 48. Primero que nada, creo que este es un ejemplo de por qué este proyecto es interesante y es diferente, ¿no? Porque como pasaron esos resultados en otras ligas en las que has estado, por ejemplo, la Liga Mexicana, la paciencia se pierde más rápido, ¿no? Y aquí creo que se nota que todos están en el mismo barco, en directiva, jugadores y cuerpo técnico para poder sacarlo adelante. Y la otra, que es importante, que jugadores importantes del equipo, Carlos Fierro hoy tuvo una muy buena actuación, Osvaldo se nota el liderazgo y también su experiencia, y eso también aporta, ¿no?
Sí, con respecto a la primera, creo que sacar entrenador en una pandemia es un grave error, porque quien comprende de fútbol y quien sabe cómo se entrena, las dificultades que hay, el mundo futbolístico a nivel mundial está bastante extraño, ¿no? De repente, hacía 20 años no perdía Real Madrid y Barcelona juntos, o 10 años, no me acuerdo cuánto. El equipo de Guardiola en un momento recibió 5 goles, bueno, cosas que sin la pandemia hubiesen sido diferentes. Y nosotros no somos, digamos, diferentes. Nosotros tenemos nuestras cosas buenas, nuestras cosas negativas, y nos hace difícil. Yo deseo que termine este torneo, la verdad. He hablado con más de 3, 4 entrenadores de la liga y todos pensamos lo mismo. Estamos en dificultad todos. Y entendemos cuando las cosas van mal, y bueno, aprovechamos cuando las cosas van bien, pero no es un torneo normal. Entonces, lo que más hay que tener en estos casos es la aceptación de saber cuando las cosas van mal para poder revertirlas. De un 7-1, darle la vuelta para terminar jugando como hoy contra el mejor rival, como dije. Bueno, hay esfuerzo, hay trabajo, y aquel que piensa que los entrenadores tenemos la varita mágica, tiene que cambiar de entrenador porque realmente es muy complicado. Entonces, creemos que este torneo deseamos que termine de la mejor manera y poder prepararnos de una manera natural de fútbol el año que viene. Con respecto a lo de Fierro y a lo de Alanís, es difícil que yo hable solo de un jugador, hablo del equipo, y cuando todos aportan su granito de arena, el equipo compite. Hasta ahí estamos, hasta competir.
All right. Thank you very much, Matías and Augustine. We'll be
Thank
bringing
you.
in a couple players shortly.
Welcome back to Black and Azul live post game. Charles Wollin with you at the top of section 113 here with the rest of our team. But you just heard from Matías Almeyda. He said he liked what he saw from his players. He also said that he felt like Loidero is one of the best players in the league. He also said on substitutions and not subbing as much, he said, the truth is I was watching the game and we were doing well to make a sub at the one sub that I made. It was the goal scoring prowess that I like about Shea Salinas. He said it's sometimes hard to change, to hold the structure and the strategy of what he was talking about. He said he saw the responses of his players and he said they were doing well. He said he only wishes that his team finishes this tournament with a good self-identity. He's always living it game by game, but always looking at his team. I'm joined by the rest of our team here, Jamon Moore, Alex Morgan, Joel Soria as well. And Joel, just coming to you after his post-match comments there, Matías Almeyda. A pleased Almeyda, a pretty even-keeled Matías Almeyda.
Sort of, Charles. He actually kind of dropped the bomb at the very end there, saying that he wishes that this season comes to an end sooner rather than later. He said that he's spoken to 4 other coaches within the league and they all agree. Look, Almeyda has been very, very adamant about not being in the right situation, right, given the coronavirus implications and the way that has really shaped the world as we know it today. So yeah, that was quite unexpected, really, and that's really what I want to highlight at the moment. I don't think any of you guys caught on to that because obviously he was speaking Spanish there pretty fluently, but that's what he said.
And lads, he has somewhat mentioned the shortness of the fact that he doesn't get a chance to really train his players. It's matches every 3 days. It's every 4 days. And, you know, we have heard that frustration from him, but speaking to those other coaches and what you just reported there, Joel, and what he had said there, you know, that's not so much of a surprise, I guess I could say, from just kind of hearing what he has to say in terms of this whole thing, and coupling that with the fact that we are in a pandemic and coupling that with no fans in stadiums. Does it feel real?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that Matías has obviously grown past this season for sure, and he meant it. He meant to say that he wished that the season ended as soon as possible, right? Like immediately, not in 2 weeks, not in 3 weeks. It's taken a toll on him, right? His body language, the way that he has spoken to us in the past, time and time again, emphasizing that, you know, we're in a pandemic, that his team isn't able to properly train, nothing is running at a normal rate whatsoever. He talked about how, you know, Barcelona and Real Madrid lost on the same day for the first time in who knows how long. Man City conceded 5 a couple of weeks ago. First time that ever happens under Guardiola. These are very strange times. He says that, you know, it's no different here, which then, you know, as I mentioned, led him to say that yeah, he wishes that the season would end immediately.
I understand that, Joel, and I understand how immensely difficult it is to play soccer right now in the middle of a pandemic, and I have the utmost respect for the way that this team and the league has handled this situation. But It feels like a weird thing to say for a team that is trying to push for the playoffs, that has 2 more weeks left in the regular season, and that is trying to make a postseason berth.
Well, I think you're missing the point, Alex. What he's trying to get across is that this is more than soccer, right? There's 200,000 lives on the line. I mean, we've lost over 200,000 people in this country alone. Millions have died. Millions are unsafe at the moment. There's a lot of financial instability. There's obviously tensions in other areas of society. So we know how Matías is, right? He's a very philosophical, he has definitely like a holistic world view of things at all times. So honestly, I mean, this comment doesn't surprise me all that much. It's definitely in the Almeyda character, but yeah, I mean, for him to say it after what I thought was a solid performance says a lot about where he's at mentally.
Yeah, personally, I like the fact that you were able to report on that, and hearing some people in the comments just chat a little bit about what was going on there. It's important to remember humanity, and it's important to remember that we're going through this. We don't have a vaccine right now. We've lost so many people in the country and worldwide. Cases are continuing to grow. We are spiking. And here's a manager of a football club in the Bay Area, one of the largest media markets in this country, just kind of parsing it all together in a 35,000, 42,000 foot view. And I think that for folks that were able to kind of hear that and kind of understand what he's getting at there, it's important, especially in a leadership position, in a leadership role, to be able to hear that, to remember that, and to know that, and know that we all play a role, because a leader within a club is a leader within a community. With that being said, a little bit back to the football, slowly but surely here. Matías Almeyda also said it was hard to change the structure and the style and the strategy. And that's why he didn't make too many subs tonight. Jamon, we were chatting during this game about the structure and the subs, and a little bit of that free role that we saw Carlos Fierro play in. In terms of that strategy and the changes and not making changes, how did you see that all kind of playing into that game plan?
Yeah, Carlos Fierro had a special role tonight. I mentioned it on my Twitter account during the game as well. He was coming into the middle really consistently, every opportunity. I think that Matías was trying to use him with Rios to create some overloads in the middle and to make things difficult in that particular area. But it was he didn't really do that well in the role for me. It seemed like, sometimes he and Rios would get a bit too close together. That would bunch things up a little bit. And he doesn't seem super confident on the ball in tight spaces. I think he does a bit more on the outside where he can have some more space. That said, defensively, he was a big part also of the way that the game was being managed. And while I think a lot of people felt that he should come off for a sub, I'm pretty certain that Almeyda's comments there were made largely toward Fierro, and what the game plan called for in that situation in order to be able to maintain the clean sheet at that point. Fierro defensively as well as offensively was a big focus of the game plan tonight. Carlos Fierro is one of the people we'll get to talk to in the press conference tonight, along with JT, according to what we've heard. So it'll be a good opportunity to ask him what was the game plan, what exactly was he asked to do tonight, which was different than other nights.
Well, it looks like we've lost connection to Alex there.
We lost connection to Alex Morgan, but he will be back in just a second. Once he is able to connect, we will hear as well from a couple players, as Jamon had mentioned. Thanks everybody again for tuning in to Black and Azul episode. I'm not sure what episode we're on this time, but appreciate you guys for all tuning in to our broadcast. Make sure that you like, make sure that you subscribe. And now back to Alex Morgan.
Hi all, I don't know what happened there, but I'm glad to be back. As I was saying, there was a moment that I remembered when Carlos Fierro backtracked all the way into his own 6-yard box and made a crucial save to, I think, prevent either Rodon or Ladero from scoring a goal. It was Rodon from scoring a goal at the far post. So that defensive effort from Carlos Fierro was hugely impressive. Obviously, he and Andy Rios, some of their biggest contributions to this team are on the defensive side of the ball when they don't have the ball, knowing how to play in Matías Almeyda's pressing system. And I think that's one of the reasons we didn't see a lot of subs tonight. I think the other reason is because this isn't really a very deep roster. I mean, if you look at the bench right now, you have Tanner Beeson, Jack Scahan, Paul Marie, Luis Felipe, Eric Calvillo, Haji, Salinas, and Cowell. Salinas is the only guy on that bench that has, significant experience in MLS. The other guys are all inexperienced rookies. So I don't think that's why. I think that's why Matías Almeyda didn't put him in, because he didn't trust him in these situations.
Definitely a high stakes situation, right? You're playing against the MLS Cup defending champion. You're playing against the favorite in the league. You have to stick with your guns, and that's what he did. I didn't really understand the fan cry for Almeyda to pull the trigger much sooner on substitutions. I mean, look, a couple of weeks ago, you lost 7-1 to this team. This time around, you've managed to conserve a 0-0 draw heading into the 70th, 80th minute. Why in the world would you want to put in an unproven youngster into the field? I think it was a no-brainer. You have to stick with the players on the field, and the one exception would obviously be Shea Salinas, which you utilized. I thought it was well done by Matías. Looks like we have JT Marcinkowski here joining us.
Hey, JT, congrats on the shutout.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we are now joined by goalkeeper JT Marcinkowski. We can jump right into questions, so let's get started with Jamon Moore.
Hi, JT. Congrats on the clean sheet. I hear it's your third in the last 4 games. And you guys were able to obviously walk away with a very important point against the Sounders. It felt like you guys were facing a different type of pressure maybe than you had faced with other teams since you had taken over the starting position. They were forcing you to hit more long balls over the top and such, and we're trying to take away a lot of the wings from you. Can you kind of talk through what you were seeing tonight from the Sounders from a tactical perspective that was kind of forcing you guys to play a little bit different out of the back tonight?
Yeah, first of all, credit to the whole team for the shutout. Didn't really have to do much tonight, so it kind of starts with the guys up front, and then it works our way back. But to answer your question, I think they definitely pressed a little bit higher. If I played it out, then they, in the second half especially, went straight to me, so I couldn't really play the opposite side, fullback like we've been doing the past few games. But I thought we broke it pretty well in the first half, and then second half, they forced us into a few mistakes. I played a few bad balls, but fortunately we could recover it pretty quickly. And even though we hit a few more long balls than normal, I thought we picked up the second ball really, really well. The guys stayed with their marks, Judson Jackson. Andy did great. Whole 11 when Shea came on, it was the same thing. So definitely forced us into a few more long balls, but overall I thought it was fine.
Thank you, JT. We will go to Joel Soria next.
Hey, JT. Congrats on holding the Sounders to a draw. I was a bit shocked to hear Matías a couple of minutes ago confess to us that he wishes that the season ended immediately. From a player perspective, I obviously chat with all the guys within the team and maybe perhaps even players outside of the team. Do you guys feel, has that same thought kind of ran through your head, or have you heard that anywhere else?
No, I think we're here to play our best every time we step out on the field. I think it's our job just to do as best as we can. Doesn't really matter when or where or who it's against. I think every time we step on the pitch, it's to go out and win. I think the shutout was nice tonight, but it would have been great to grab 3 points from a top team like Seattle. But I think we'll take it and move on and get ready for Vancouver.
Thank you, JT. Alex Morgan.
Unmuted. Hi, JT. Congrats on the shutout. You guys are now in 7th place. How confident are you that this team can make the playoffs, and where do you guys see yourselves at in the playoff race?
Yeah, I think we're just trying to take it day by day, game by game. I think obviously the end goal is to get into the playoffs and have a chance at competing for the cup because we feel like we really can win it. But that's a pretty far way away, and there's a lot of things that have to happen before that. So kind of all of our attention's on Vancouver for next week. I think it's nice that we have a few days off, more than normal, and so we're gonna have a really good week of training and kind of get back to the basics of a lot of things and make sure that we're ready for Vancouver because that's the most important thing, and kind of the rest will fall into place any way it should.
Thank you. Alicia Rodriguez.
Thank you. JT, I want to ask a question that may sound a bit naive, but if you'll bear with me. As a goalkeeper, when you get a chance to actually train, when you're not going 2 games a week with really just recovery days in between, how important is it for you to get training days in, and kind of what's different about the approach when you have, say, in this case, like a week to prepare for the next game as opposed to just a couple days?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot goes into it. Like you said, when we're playing all the time, it's a lot more recovery rather than trying to work on things that need to be improved. And that's not just for me, but the entire team. And so I think goalkeeping specific, kind of with a full week, we'll have each day will be a focus and try to hone in on things that need to be improved and kind of go from there. And then not only with just goalkeeping, but with a longer week, that means the sessions can be a bit longer. And so we can be more with the team and try to get a full training in rather than it mostly being recovery.
Thank you, JT. We have 2 more questions, starting with Jamon Moore.
Hi, JT. My other question is regarding, I believe this is the first time that you've had Alanis and Youngworth as a pair in front of you for a game so far. Normally you've had Tanner Beeson in front of you. Any sort of adjustment and differences in having a veteran in that particular spot as compared to a rookie? Obviously, we know Tanner's been fantastic, but how does that affect the way you manage the back line when you've got a veteran there instead?
Yeah, I'm not sure if much changes, to be honest. Obviously, Osvaldo has played at the highest level, and like you were saying, he's a veteran. But I think Tanner's done a fantastic job when he's been in, and not much personally really changes for me. I try to communicate as much as I can with them, make sure everything's organized in the back. Obviously, Flo and Osvaldo do a great job communicating to Judson and Jackson in front of them. But so does Tanner. So we're really fortunate that kind of we have 3 guys who can play really well. And I mean, like you saw in Portland maybe a few weeks ago with Jacob coming in as well. He did a great job when he started and played 70 minutes. And so we kind of have a surplus of center backs at the moment. And no matter who plays, it's 100% confident. And everybody in the team knows that they're going to do really well.
All right, and one last question from Alex Morgan.
Hi, JT. I just want to follow up on Alicia's question about sort of the training schedules, because a couple weeks ago we were hearing from some of you guys that the focus was a lot on building out of the back and keeping possession. So I'm just wondering what the focus is now, what you guys feel like you have to improve and are working on to improve for this, as you're building up for a playoff berth.
Fortunately, I'm not the one who makes the training session, so that kind of falls on the coaching staff, and I'm sure they'll watch the video and kind of they'll have plenty of things that we need to improve on and get better at throughout the week. And so a lot of it is kind of how we play and like you were saying, building out of the back and finishing plays off, but as well as like 1v1 defending and whole team shape. So throughout the week, it'll be a lot of different subjects, I guess, to work on, but it's definitely up to the coaching staff, and I know all of us will train really hard, and we're looking forward to it.
All right. Thank you very much, JT. Congrats again on the shutout.
Thank you.
There's the Quakes goalkeeper, JT Marcinkowski, another shutout tonight for him. He has performed superbly in that role since taking over from Daniel Vega in that position. He says he credits the whole team for the shutout. It definitely starts with the guys up top. Judson Jackson stayed with their marks. Andy Rios. He said that the way that Seattle played definitely forced him into making a few more long balls than usual. The shutout's nice, but it would be great to get the 3 points from a top team like Seattle. So the intention obviously was clearly there from him, and knowing that he wanted to build on that confidence that this team has had over the last last number of games that they've played. The end goal is competing for the cup, because he says he thinks that this team can win it. And then he went on to talk about some rest between now and Vancouver. Jamon Moore, if you're joining me from the press conference back onto Black and Azul here, JT's performance and the way that he has been and making save after save, some good saves for him tonight, but his comments this evening certainly telling of many things, and kind of the mindset, the way that he sees the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind that the biggest problem that the Quakes were facing a few weeks ago, where they were giving up the most shots in the league, and it really wasn't even close. Daniel Vega was facing, over 10 shots a game, and quite a few of those would be on target. It's unclear whether JT is the reason they're facing fewer shots, but I think that change has definitely renewed the energy in the back line, and giving them a sense of confidence. And tonight they gave up only 1 shot on goal and 4 shots on total. And we said before the game that was a key to victory. And sure, there were mistakes. And JT, I remember made one of those mistakes where made a pass that basically went almost right in front of goal, straight to the Sounders. But his team recovered very well in those situations. And those would have been situations, 2-3 weeks ago, that was almost a sure goal for the opposition. And, they've changed that around. So credit to JT, credit to his back line. Judson, I think everyone knows, was just all over the place tonight. Seeing him in person versus TV, I'm sure doesn't do it justice. But I can see from the comments that the fans have been making that they appreciated the effort that Judson put in tonight as well in shutting down Nico Ladero. I think if Almeyda said that he is the best player in the league, someone mentioned that by transitive property. Now that makes Judson the best player in the league. Who am I to disagree with that comment? He definitely earned it tonight.
Look, Jamon, the San Jose Quakes have only allowed 5 goals in their last 6 games. And that's remarkable, because in the games before that, they were allowing 5 and 6 goals every game, each and every game. And I think that JT Marcinkowski starting in goal has everything to do with that improvement. Not only is his shot stopping really strong, I think he made a couple of key saves tonight, especially in the first half, but his distribution is really good. That allows the Quakes to keep the ball in a way that they weren't able to before, and slow the tempo of the game down and prevent teams from shipping 6 and 7 goals on them like Seattle did last time, just because they don't have the ball. They don't have enough chances to do that. And then finally, I think his leadership has just been really key. As you saw in that press conference, I think Diane was the one who commented it. JTC is pretty intelligent. He is very intelligent. He's a strong leader. He's a very intelligent goalkeeper. And I think he's improved this team.
Yeah, I certainly agree. And just having the chance to see him out of the back and commandeer that back line and be able to dictate from his position as a goalkeeper and be able to do that, he has to direct the orchestra, right? He has to be the guy that's vocal. He has to be the person that makes sure people fall in line literally all the time. And also, he has a difficult job because he has to distribute out of the back, out of a position where there's nobody else really behind him. Of course, he'll play a ball down the end line for one of his center backs, and that's how they play. And he does it in a really good way. Obviously, he's been training for this position for years, and clearly he is the Quakes' number one. He's the undisputed goalkeeper at the moment, and it's a big part of their success that JT Marcinkowski has been really the fulcrum of that. But let's pivot back to Judson. I mean, yes, the comments here, and hearing everybody from the offset as well. Thomas Boggs had put in a comment earlier about Judson, how many miles did he run? But it is really a joy to watch him play game in and game out for this Quakes team. I will say, though, if Judson or Jackson Yueill is not available, it's a thin roster. So not only Joel Soria is Judson a huge part of the engine room of this team that makes them tick with Jackson Yueill. It's high stakes because if Judson, comes up with a hamstring injury or a thigh strain or something, or a bit of a knock that rules him out for a few games, this team's going to have a tough time. So his impact is not just low impact, it's always high impact.
Without a doubt. I mean, I recall when Judson picked up a yellow card today, it's almost like we heard a gasp throughout the stadium. A yellow card for a player that is so important like Judson is definitely not what you want if you're the San Jose Earthquakes. Not if it gets you that much closer to a red card. And that player being sent out is Judson. He is the fulcrum of the team. He's the big cog within the engine. He's the most potent piston that they have. And he's proved it time and time again. I recall that in our conversation with Jesse Fiorinelli, Alex, and Jamon back in January, if I'm not mistaken, Jesse told us up front, he said, look, I have no doubt that if Judson were American, you would be with the U.S. men's national team. And I agree. I completely agree. Judson definitely was the diamond in the rough. And he's demonstrating to all of us who watch this team regularly that he is one of the best sixes in this league without a doubt. I would put him right up there with the Diego Charras of the world, without a doubt.
Yeah, and I'm seeing a comment here from Marcelo that says Judson is the Quakes MVP this season. I think that's absolutely right. He has just been so pivotal to the way this team plays. They wouldn't be able to play without Judson. And it does worry me that they're sort of developing an over-reliance on Judson, as Charles says, that they don't really have any other options there. You look at the bench, you got Jack Scahan, Luis Felipe, Eric Calvillo, nobody who really plays that defensive midfield role the way that Judson does. So I think that that might be somewhere that Jesse Fiorinelli needs to strengthen this roster over the offseason. Is not only to get an attacking midfielder, a number 10, we've been talking about that for ages, but also to get a backup defensive midfielder in case Judson goes out with injury at any point, because the Quakes are so reliant on him. And we have seen in games that they have struggled when they've asked Judson to do too much. That was one of the reasons why they were shipping so many goals, is because Judson was just trying to plug all the holes, all the gaps, every which way wherever they opened up. So he's really, really strong in that defensive midfield position, but you have to worry that might turn into an over-reliance.
Yeah,
you have
John,
to imagine.
Go ahead, Joel.
I just quickly wanted to add that you have to imagine that the Quakes got him for a bargain price, coming from Serie B in Brazil, the second division, and specifically the Avaí, the team that he came from. You have to imagine that it was a steal for a player of his caliber and his age. Just an absolute bargain. There's no way of doing better business than by going out to a market that has little competition in the international sphere. Sure, there's a lot of Brazilian first division Brazilian teams tapping into the second division market, but you don't. It's very rare to see, the negotiations happening between an MLS club and a Brazilian second division side. The Quakes happened to do that, and it looks like they got a really, really good deal.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a fantastic piece of business. And I do see one comment here that I want to add that Diane said. It was that he began the season with injury. Judson began the season with injury, and they lost both those games. And I think that's absolutely right. We've already seen what this Quakes look like without Judson. That was that 2-2 draw with Toronto and 5-2 loss to Minnesota United way back in April before the COVID crisis, before all of that happened. And it did not look good. The Quakes lacked that pivot player in the midfield.
Yeah, I also see some comments in here from Andy Thomas about I've never heard the national media talk about Judson. Why is that? And John Jay, the MLS Extra Time podcast, recently discussed the top CDMs in the league, and they predictably did not mention Judson's name. Jamon Moore, you haven't chimed in yet on this lesson. I guess we'll come back to Judson because here is Carlos Fierro and his press conference this evening. So we'll hear from the Quakes winger.
Hola, Carlos.
Hola, hola.
All right, everyone. We are now joined by midfielder Carlos Fierro. Carlos will be speaking in Spanish and will be translating all of his answers into English. So let's go ahead and get started with Alicia Rodriguez.
Thank you. Carlos, congrats on picking up a draw tonight. You've started the last 8 games. It's your longest run in the starting lineup with the Earthquakes. How do you feel getting this sustained run of games, and what are you hoping to accomplish the rest of the season?
Felicidades, ya llevas 8 partidos de titular consecutivamente, que es la racha más larga que has tenido con el club hasta ahora. ¿Cómo te has sentido y cuáles son tus objetivos para terminar la temporada?
Sí, estoy muy contento de estar teniendo participación en el equipo. Es algo que necesitaba, que había trabajado para ello en cada entrenamiento y sí, muy contento y motivado. Y bueno, tratar de seguir con esa mentalidad. Lo importante acá es que el equipo siga sumando, que sigamos mejorando día a día y poder entrar a playoffs.
Yes, I'm very happy for my run so far with the team. Something that I just try to improve on day by day. And I'm very happy, very grateful with the team and how we're doing so far up to this day. And my objective is just continue to contribute to the team and overall and you know, try to make as far as possible throughout the season.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Jamon Moore.
Good evening, Carlos. Congratulations on the clean sheet and the point. It seems like you had a different role tonight a bit. We saw you coming into the middle quite a bit, despite the fact that you were playing as a left wing as well. Can you talk about what Matías asked you to do in the game plan tonight against the Sounders and how it's different than what you may normally do in that role?
Parece que Matías se puso en otro rol el día de hoy, un poco más en la parte central, como medio ofensivo, en vez de en la lateral como técnicamente lo has hecho en veces pasadas. Platícanos un poco más de cuál fue el plan el día de hoy que te dijo Matías para tu posición el día de ese partido.
Sí, empecé jugando por fuera como lo había estado haciendo mal, esa era mi posición inicial, pero Matías nos da libertad, ¿no? Por ahí me vieron entrar al centro, cambiarme de banda. Matías nos da esa libertad de tener esa movilidad dentro del campo, pero la posición inicial sí fue por izquierda.
Yeah, I started off on the outside wing, like I have been in the previous games. But Matías has given me a little bit of liberty in terms of being a little more free in my position. So I did cut a little towards the middle of the field. Sometimes I drop back and help out on each side. So yes, I did start off on the wing. jugando de titular. Te preguntas si ya te sientes un poco más cómodo, un poco más adaptado al club, a la liga, al torneo, cómo se juega aquí en este país el Wollin, cómo lo estás viendo ahorita.
Sí, como lo mencioné anteriormente, estoy muy contento por estar teniendo la continuidad. Como decía, lo he trabajado. Sigo con esa misma mentalidad de tratar de seguir dando cada vez más. En cada partido me voy sintiendo con mejor nivel, con mejor aire para seguir corriendo. Sé que me falta todavía mucho por dar, sé mis capacidades y sé que aún me falta por darle más a este equipo. Y bueno, esperamos seguir por ese nivel de trabajo que se ha demostrado y seguir ayudando al equipo.
Yeah, like I said before, I've definitely felt a lot better today and throughout the season so far. It's something that I'm very happy with, and I feel like I can continue to give more. I feel that I keep improving on my level game after game, and I know my limits. I know I can give this club, this team, a lot more. So I'm just excited to build upon that, continue to grow, and help out as much as possible for what's to come for the rest of the season.
Thank you. We just have two more questions in Spanish now from Carlos Eustice.
Buenas noches, Tocayo. Primero que nada, creo que debes de sentirte a gusto. Tuviste un partido muy completo. ¿Y cómo fue ese cambio en el equipo? A ti no te ha tocado vivirlo así, pero después de todas estas goleadas, de malos resultados, poderse unir todos para poder tener partidos como el de hoy.
Gracias. Tuvimos, como dices, goleadas, tuvimos partidos muy difíciles. El equipo estaba en el fondo. El equipo sabía que ya no podía ir más para abajo, estábamos en último lugar. Entonces, lo único que nos quedaba era tratar de salir de ese hoyo donde estábamos, tan abajo. Cada entrenamiento, cada partido, Matías nos metía en la cabeza la idea de que podíamos salir, que habíamos tenido ya partidos muy buenos, habíamos estado en los lugares de arriba. Entonces yo creo que cada uno se convenció, ¿no? Y se miró un poquito atrás y dijo que estábamos con las fuerzas, con la mentalidad para salir. Si lo has visto, son partidos totalmente diferentes, con otra actitud, con otras ganas, peleamos los 90 minutos, todos corren al parejo, entra uno, sale otro, el equipo no cambia, cada jugador sabe lo que tiene que hacer, está trabajando al parejo el equipo y bueno, contento por eso porque en verdad el equipo está muy unido ahora.
So for everyone, the question was on how the team was able to overcome the previous negative matches a couple weeks ago. And Fierro's response was that, yes, everyone was aware about the negative performances, but they continue to keep their heads up. Matías continued to tell the guys that they were going to be able to get out of the hole and continue to fight forward. And that's what they've been doing so far. And their work has paid off now. And now their mentality is just building upon the momentum that they have right now. And it's a team where everyone runs, everyone fights, everyone's ready. And that's their focus right now.
Thank you. One last question from Joel Soria.
Buenas noches, Güero, Joel Soria aquí en San José. Mencionas que tienes más que dar para el equipo, que puedes dar más, puedes aportar más. Yo te pregunto, ¿para qué puede dar este equipo actual que se ve aquí en San José? Obviamente, hace un poco más de un mes se sufrió una derrota brutal, 7-1 contra Seattle, en Seattle, y hoy contra el mismo equipo se le jugó al tú por tú. ¿A qué puede llegar San José?
Hola, buenas noches. El equipo está para pelear, tiene que estar en los lugares de arriba, tenemos que poner a este equipo lo más alto que se pueda. Obviamente nuestra primera meta es entrar a los playoffs, lo tenemos puesto en la cabeza, ahorita estamos en ese lugar y solamente depende de nosotros. estar dentro o que nos saquen, ¿no? Entonces el equipo día con día, entrenamiento a entrenamiento, partido tras partido, sabe que quiere eso, ¿no? Y obviamente, lo personal, y creo que todos los jugadores del equipo pensamos en el campeonato, ¿no? Si no, pues para qué estás jugando ese torneo. Pero primero, nuestra primera meta sería entrar a playoff y pelear por el campeonato. Como lo dices, hoy le jugamos al primer lugar, al tú por tú, nos habían goleado, pero creo que hoy se topan con un diferente equipo, con un equipo que va a pelearle al equipo que sea y no va a ser fácil sacarnos puntos a nosotros.
So again, for everyone, the question was on what's the most San Jose can give for the rest of the season, and Fierro's response was that the team can give a lot more. The team is thinking on being on the top positions of the Western Conference, and it's up to the players to make it to the playoffs. And obviously, their mentality, their goal overall is to win the MLS Cup. So that's what they're focused on right now. And he personally thinks that they are able to reach that goal. Today was a different club that Seattle faced in comparison to the previous loss that they had, and they're just going to be able to, continue to build upon that and do their best as they go forward.
All right. Thank you very much, Carlos and Pedro. And thank you all for joining us. We'll see you next Saturday.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Black and Azul Live post-game here at Earthquake Stadium. Charles Wollin, Joel Soria, Alex Morgan, and Jamon Moore here. That is the conclusion of the press conferences this evening. You heard from Carlos Fierro, the Quakes winger. He's getting a good run of games currently at the moment. Jamon, you had the chance to ask him a question about his position and the way that he is, out on the wing, but cutting inside and playing kind of almost underneath the striker a little bit, almost as an attacking midfield player as well, kind of in a number 10 role, very centrally. And then he says he drops back and defends on both sides. Based on what he said there and kind of admitting that, a little bit more clarity for you in terms of where Matías Almeyda is going to kind of deploy him on the field?
Yeah, I don't think anything's permanent here. I think it is a matchup-based type decision. I think he was given the liberty to be able to come inside tonight against the Galaxy, right? It was either Lima or Tommy. Nick Lima talked to us in the Friday press conference, mentioning that it was the way that the Galaxy played. They knew that they could bring a weak side outside back into the middle and be able to create overloads there, and they weren't going to get burned on the outside, and they had a plan for being able to do it. Tonight, it was Carlos Fierro who was given that kind of liberty. On a different night, we might see a different player be able to get that kind of liberty. I think the important point was that he felt that he was able to do that and still be able to make his defensive assignments, and we saw in many situations that he did. He was, like we said before, very good defensively tonight. Almeyda did not want to take him off for a young player at the end because he felt that Carlos had enough left in the tank. And of course, now that the team pushed hard to finish that game off, they get a week of rest and they get to face Vancouver away. But that's an important week, and knowing that they have a week of rest to be able to come, that's something that they were able to do.
We haven't had the chance to really hear from Carlos Fierro. He's been here just over a year. He was a summer transfer player that came in last season in the middle of 2019. Kind of asked about his mentality and the team. And Joel, you had the chance to ask him that question. He said, like I said before, and what I saw before, I feel like I can continue to give more. I know my limits. I know I can give this team a lot more. And then on the team side, he said he felt like the team can give a lot more. And the goal is being in those top positions. And ultimately, obviously, winning MLS Cup because he thinks that we can win it. Second player tonight that, just very focused and saying the words, we think we can win MLS Cup.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think that they can win the cup. I'll be honest, and I'll say it here with no hesitations. I think the Quakes aren't there at the moment. They are not LAFC. They're not a Seattle. They're not a Toronto, etc. You guys get the point. What I do appreciate, though, is the mentality that Fierro brings forward. This is the type of mentality that you have to have within a winning team. This is the type of mentality you have to have if you want to be a legitimate organization. You have to convince everyone within the entity that to believe that they belong at the top of the food chain. Because I mean, as Fierro mentioned, if you're not aspiring, if you're not dreaming, if you're not relishing, winning or hoisting a cup or the league title, then what's the point, right? What's the point? Sure, today I think that his comments are a bit far-fetched, but you have to appreciate the ambition and that mindset that for so long has been absent here in San Jose.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Joel and Jamon on Carlos Fierro. And I want to get to transfer talk. I want to talk about transfers to end this show, to wrap up this show. We've heard a little bit about what's going on with Cade Cowell and his situation, Barcelona monitoring Cade Cowell. And also, I just want to talk about transfers incoming as well. Where do we start with this? Alex, I guess I'll start with you.
We can start with the Cade Cowell rumors. There was a report in ESPN this week that Barcelona are tracking Cade Cowell. They're monitoring Cade Cowell's progress, along with some other MLS prospects like Caden Clark of the New York Red Bulls, Brendan Aronson, Gianluca Busio. And there was a lot of buzz about this. I got the chance to ask Nick Lima about this in his midweek press conference, and he was very excited about it. I was the first person to let him know about the rumors, and he said, "You're telling me for the first time right now, but I can say retweet it, repost it, do whatever you can, even if it isn't true, because he deserves it. He's a hardworking kid. He's shown humility and everything, puts in the extra work. He's a great player. The sky's the limit for him." And I think that's absolutely true. Now, I think the rumors are far-fetched because he's not going to move to Barcelona anytime soon. I got the chance to speak to Cade Cowell's representatives this week. They said that they have not heard anything from Barcelona and that right now Cade's focus is solely squarely in San Jose. His goal is to win a starting position. And that makes sense because you look at the MLS players that have moved to Europe in the last 3-4 years. Alphonso Davies, just this week, Brendan Aronson, $6 million transfer to Germany. They have established themselves as consistent starters in MLS. Each of them has had a good year and a half in Major League Soccer before they've been able to make that jump. So I think that's the time frame that Cade is probably looking at. Also considering he turns 18 almost a year to the day from now. So I think his goal should be to establish himself as a starter next season, and then you can start thinking about the transfers. The way I interpreted it was more that Barcelona were tracking him as in monitoring his progress, but it hasn't progressed to the stage yet where they actually have him on a short list or have made contact with the clubs. And honestly, it would be pretty negligent if they weren't tracking a guy like Cade Cowell. They have the resources to be tracking every promising 16-year-old and 17-year-old in the world, right? And there is this informative thread, I think, from Andre on Twitter. He does some scouting. He works in the scouting world. And he said, "I never understand how this hype machine works. I'd be surprised if these clubs were not tracking U19s with good minutes in any league. They have the huge scouting networks, eyes in every country." So I think that's sort of where I'm at on this story right now.
Well, look, sure. I totally buy the argument without a doubt, but I see it from a different angle at the same time. And what I'm particularly pondering about is the fact that I think that this rumor incentivizes other European teams who are interested in Cowell. And as Jeff Reuter from The Athletic reported, there are other top European clubs interested in Cowell, among other young homegrowns in the league. It puts them in a position where they have to act and act quickly. Why? Because the snap of a finger, Barcelona or any other top 5 club in the world can have Cowell on the next plane to Barcelona. without a doubt, right? So if you are, let's say, the Salzburgs of the world, if you're the Mönchengladbachs of the world, if you're the Brighton Hove Albion, I don't know, you name it, any top team or any bottom of the table or mid-table team within the top 5 leagues in Europe, if you're thinking, if you're contemplating, if you're planning, if you're strategizing, if you're orchestrating a move for a player like Cowell, this rumor only tells you that you need to act faster before the Giants come in and take away your prized possession. I personally want to say that that's the way that I see it, and I also want to make it clear that if a big club, which I think is going to happen unless something dramatic happens with Cowell's career, which I hope would never happen, if a major transfer happens, I think that it saves Jesse Fioranelli without a doubt. I think it cleans his record. I'll say it here. I think it does. I think it pays off. I think it makes up for everything that has happened in San Jose.
Well, let me talk to you guys a little bit about how this works in reality. So through my work at American Soccer Analysis, we've had the opportunity to talk to many front office people in this league. I can just tell you from an MLS perspective how these things work. Every team is tracking dozens of players, hundreds of players across several different leagues. One team that we spoke with recently has 17 different leagues that they are monitoring right now. And they are running filters on their data on all those leagues, right? They're pulling it through Scout, through Opta, through Instat, through all these different providers. They're pulling this data in, and they're filtering for the certain styles of players that fit the way that they play. The smart clubs are doing this, okay? And they're identifying these players. Yeah, the click of a button. So there should be players like Cade Cowell who are going to meet that criteria. The question is, as teams filter more and more and actually get closer to identifying and signing a player, do the players continue to meet the filters? Do they pass the data tests? Then do they pass the video tests? Then they take a look at their contract situation. Is this a player who we can afford and fits the type of contract? Are they becoming available? So there's a number of these criteria that have to be passed. So when you take a look at a situation like Cade Cowell, right, he's not getting playing time every single game like an Alphonso Davies was. And there's a lot of video out there. I think it's going to take, a little bit more time. He's going to need to play on a more regular basis, and so that he's going to be able to pass that filter criteria so that teams will really be able to pick up on him and identify him. Right now, it's he's hitting those first, maybe second set of filters. Well, but there's just not enough data and not enough video on him quite yet.
I would challenge that a bit, Jamon. I would say that given that the American market is this new trendy hot commodity, I would say that it wouldn't actually take that much playing time on Cade's behalf for teams to jump on signing him. I mean, I think that Cade has shown that he's definitely at the level to start regularly in MLS. I've said it before. I think there's no doubt about that. Would he flourish game in and game out? Probably not. Alphonso Davies didn't. 40 games into his MLS career. There's going to be a learning curve, sure, but the technical abilities that he possesses for his age are beyond many other players in this league, and that I think sends a really, really strong statement to clubs who might be admiring him from afar.
Here's what I think, Joel. I think that it's actually in the Quakes' interests to wait and to hold off on, making a transfer, accepting any transfer bids, because they're not going to get $6 million for Cade Cowell right now, like Philadelphia Union did for Brendan Aronson. They're just not going to get that kind of money without him playing significantly more minutes. But if he does, and if he establishes himself as a starter, then you're starting to look at some of those more hefty transfer fees, and then it becomes more of an incentive for the Quakes to look to see how much they can recruit from a transfer hit to Europe.
What makes you think that a team wouldn't pay $6 million for him when he can easily be deployed as a winger, as a second forward? Shoot, I think that I've said this before. I mean, for me, Cade Cowell is the second coming of Alphonso Davies. I mean, just look at his not only his build, but his style on the field. He mimics a young Alphonso Davies. Alphonso Davies is playing as a fullback for Bayern Munich. I think that Cade Cowell can easily transition into that position as well. Whereas Aronson, I think, is much more limited on where he can play on the field, which then limits your value.
I disagree with that, Joel. I think that's a premature assessment. I think that Cade Cowell has really strong physical attributes, and he's shown that his technique is improving, but his technical skills aren't at the levels of Alphonso Davies. Alphonso Davies is a unique generational talent, and I don't think that Cade Cowell has shown that yet. Even though he is incredibly promising, I think he needs to show more improvement before we can start making those Alphonso Davies comparisons.
You're talking about the 2020 Davies, though. I'm not talking about the 2020 Davies here. I'm talking about the 17, the 18 Davies, which was a very different Davies, if you have the memory.
I think Alphonso Davies was still shredding MLS players at the age of 16 and 17 in a way that we haven't seen Cade do consistently enough. He's scored a couple of really strong goals, but I don't think he's at that level just yet. And I also disagree with what you said about Brendan Aronson. I actually think that Brendan Aronson is a super flexible and versatile type midfielder. And I think that Cade, if anything, is a little more one-dimensional in that he is basically exclusively a winger and a forward, because his pace is such a large part of his game.
Yeah, I'm a bit more with Alex on this at the moment. I think more time. Sorry about that. More time is going to be needed for him to be able to develop. We saw a close game tonight in which, if he was a fully mature player, he would be out there, and Matías decided not to bring him on. I think that tells me that he still has certain elements that he needs to grow before he's going to be able to reach that threshold to command the type of money that you're talking about, Joel. Tyler Adams, and yes, I realize this was within the same organization, but Tyler Adams was $6 million. He's not yet Tyler Adams, so there's more room.
Right,
that he's
different positions though, Jamon, and $6 million in the market is not a lot of money.
Tyler Adams is an outside back.
You guys are treating $6 million as if it were 60. Come on,
it
guys.
would shatter the Quakes transfer record.
Sure,
I don't think the Quakes have ever played more than $3 or $4 million for a player.
Of course it would. That's what they're banking on, right?
I think he's going to get there, but I agree with Alex. I think if the Quakes will wait a little bit more on this, and I think they really kind of have to, because he's 17 and he's going to need another year before he's 18 and able to go to Europe anyway. So the opportunity needs to be there for him next year. He needs to get that regular playing time, really show what he can do, develop to that next level, and that transfer number is going to double. It's going to get to that $6 million if they can be patient for another year or two. I think if they try to go too quickly, it's going to be more like a 2 or a 3.
I love it. I love the banter, and I love what we have to say about Cade, and I love the fact that the viewership here is also commenting and also active. It's nice to have a youngster that's promising, that's exciting, that's part of the San Jose Earthquakes, and that's scored some big goals for this team against Rayados, against the LA Galaxy, assisted that wonderful last goal for Nick Lima at the end of the Galaxy. So we'll have to come back to this, obviously, and let's talk about transfers incoming, because Jesse Fiorinelli made some comments that they would get a couple players in this Quakes roster, and the MLS transfer window closes right at the end of October. Where are we at with this, Alex?
I don't think that the San Jose Earthquakes are going to be signing anybody in this transfer window, even though Jesse Fioranelli made those promises. I just don't think it's going to happen with 11 days left in the window now. Anything's possible, but for me, it doesn't make sense. It wouldn't be possible to assimilate a player into the squad that quickly. And look, what happened last season with Carlos Fierro and Andy Rios, they both had a couple months to get integrated into the squad, and they didn't. And, that seemed to have a negative impact on the team's, mentality and morale. And that was sort of at the start of their slump that year. So I think that, Jesse Fioranelli just has to admit that he failed on that promise to sign somebody in this transfer window. I think that it really needed to happen back in August, back in September. And it was a failure. If the Quakes had made a significant signing in that period, maybe they don't lose those games to Colorado, Seattle, Portland 6-1, 7-1. I think the team really needed some new additions in that moment. He wasn't able to get that done. But at this point, I think they just have to admit that failure and move on and realign their prospects this winter.
Yeah, I think it's too late. It's too late to integrate anyone, as Alex said. To me, the number one reason that you would bring someone in right now is because you want to be able to get them into off-season fitness and be able to track them the entire off-season to make sure that they meet certain fitness requirements coming into the preseason, as we know that the team does with the players all last off-season, and prepare them for Cancun or whatever the plan's going to be in preseason. It's the only reason to bring someone in right now. It is a good opportunity now that Reno is out of the USL Championship playoffs due to their shootout loss to Phoenix Rising, to take a look at 2 or 3 players there who may be able to do something. They already play the system, and they might need some fresh legs coming up here with a bit of a push. It's a good opportunity to take a look at 2 or 3 Reno players, in my opinion. One of them would be Foster Langsdorff, who led the team in goals. I think he scored in 10 of his last 11 games or something along those lines. Another player I've pointed out is Sam Gleadle, who's an outside back. You can see tonight there's a lot of requirements on outside backs. He's an excellent 1v1 defender. I'm not saying these guys are going to for sure fit into the team, but I think it's a good opportunity to take a look at them. There is place for a non-international, i.e. American roster player at this point. You could fill it with one of them, and it wouldn't retract from your ability to be able to sign an international, as I'm sure the team is trying to do.
All right, let's go to final thoughts. I will start with you, Joel Soria.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it time and time again tonight, but definitely a big psychological booster for the Quakes to pull off this 0-0 draw here against the Sounders. Obviously, the defending champions, one of the favorites to lift the MLS Cup in a couple of months, and to limit them to 4 total shots, 1 on target, is something that deserves an applause from everyone.
All right, a 0-0 draw, and Jamon?
Yeah, it's one of those nights where you said, hey, look, if we could guarantee you a point and a draw against the Sounders coming into the game, would you take it? And I think pretty much everybody would have. From that perspective, I think overall it's a success. And when you take a look at where this team was failing, where they were failing was on the defensive side of the equation, giving up, 5, 6, 7 goals a game. Now, they've had 3 clean sheets in the last 4 games. They've given up only just a handful of goals over that time period. And one of those teams is now the defending MLS champion. They're going to go on the road and have an opportunity to be able to get more points at Vancouver. I think right now it's you got to put all the eggs into that basket. You have to figure out a way. It's a road game, and it's actually going to be played in Portland, but you have to figure out how to walk away with 3 points. If the Quakes can win in Portland, it won't be against the Portland Timbers, but it will be the first time that they have won a regular season game in Portland. And that should be their focus, is trying to get ready for being able to play on turf again, which always seems to stymie the Quakes for some reason.
All right, just over to Jamon's left is Alex Morgan. Final thoughts on this evening.
I think this was an important result for the Quakes. I think there's only 4 games left in the season after this, so you're at the stage where you have to start, imagining and exploring all of the different possibilities and permutations about how this Western Conference table could look at the end of the season. I think the Quakes only need probably 5 or 6 points from these last 4 games to secure a playoff berth. They're right about 60% in the 538 odds right now to make it to the playoffs. So next weekend's game against Vancouver is huge. The Quakes destroyed them really comprehensively, a 3-0 win last week, and they're going to play away this time, away in Portland. That game will be held. And if they can get the victory, I think that will put them in a really strong position to make a playoff berth. I'm actually pretty optimistic at this stage.
Yeah, let's pull up those fixtures here. Just 4 matches left to play for the Earthquakes. They go up to Portland to play the Vancouver Whitecaps, a neutral venue. But the Quakes, used to that turf, they did lose 3-0 to the Timbers just around 10 days ago. Then they're back here midweek against Salt Lake, then home against LAFC, and then to end it out on decision day against the Seattle Sounders, the team they just tied tonight, 0-0. Let's go ahead and take a look at the live table once more for you as well. They are in that 7th position. So 19 games played. 24 points for the San Jose Earthquakes, 1.26 points per game. I told the team I wasn't going to shout out the points per game. I guess that's somewhat maybe important if Colorado potentially could be involved in this, as you see Colorado down there at the 11th spot, and they've only played 13 games, and they've had a COVID just be part of their situation right now that they're dealing with, and if MLS is able to get them in the playoffs, they might do that. But we're still kind of waiting on the format. We're still waiting on what's going to happen. They might do it by regions. They might do it kind of West Coast or Midwest. So we're still kind of waiting to see what's going to happen, to see how this is all going to shake out. But the Quakes here, as you can see, again, 24 points in that 7th position. There's 3 other teams on the 24 points as well, 1.26 points per game as well. So we want to end with this, though. The Quakes social media team posted this, and it's a picture of Go Quakes from the Bay Area's Muweka Ohlone tribe, displaying the Choctaw word for Quakes right there, as you can see on the seats. It was proudly displayed there on the south stand. Yes. Right there. And just another reminder, there was Indigenous Peoples Day just around 10 days ago. But just a reminder, we are on Ohlone lands, and that wanted to let everybody know that. And that's important. So thank you for everybody for tuning into our show. If you are tuning in for the first time, make sure that you make sure that you subscribe, make sure you ring the bell for updates as well. Once we go live, we want to continue to bring you this show and grow our viewership, grow our community. It's important to us. If you're at home, stay safe, wear your mask, and encourage others to wear their masks so that we can stop the spread of this virus as we wait for a vaccine, and hopefully continue to support one another and lift each other up during this very challenging time. Send everybody kind of positivity and light wherever they are, and make sure that you vote in this upcoming election. The election is in 2 weeks and 2 days. So if you haven't mailed in your ballot, or you like to go to the polls early, or you like to vote on election day, make sure that you vote. Make sure that your voice is heard during such a challenging time for our country and our world. We are Black and Azul. Alex Morgan, Jamon Moore, Joel Soria, Aaron Sholl is our associate producer. Our director and executive producer is Jason Sholl. My name is Charles Wollin. We'll see you next time. The Quakes 0, the Seattle Sounders 0. Live here, the final score from Quake Stadium. See you soon.